Hello, dear listeners. Today we're going to be talking about The Last Olympian by Rick Riordan, which is the fifth book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. It basically everything with Kronos is coming to a head. Kronos has his army. He is ready. Percy and Annabeth, Grover, and the rest of the demigods are readying up, trying their best to protect Manhattan, protect Olympus, while the gods are off fighting Typhon, I think a giant titan, one of those, who is wreaking havoc across the country. I had big thoughts and feelings on this book. I forgot a lot about what happens in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard to read. So here's your heads up, spoilers ahead, because we can't talk about this book without talking about spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers and you haven't read the book, please stop here, come back later. But
you can leave us muted.
Yeah,
and you can
give us
up our numbers.
Give us the view. Yeah, give us the view, and then just come back later.
Yeah.
So Clarice, really frustrated. Like I had to keep reminding myself that they're all kids.
Yeah, they're like 15, 16 years old.
But as a parent, okay, like listen, I struggle with this series from a parent's point of view anyway, because, you know, putting kids in dangerous situations makes me icky. But Clarice's attitude over a chariot was really, really frustrating. Because it's like, that's not the hill you want to die on.
There's
like,
a
truly.
war, you know, like that's
like,
not a hill you want your
place.
friend to die on, you know?
Yeah.
Not to throw that in. But
yeah.
I mean,
like
Clarice,
I understand. Like, I understand where she was coming from the, you know, the Ares cabin is disrespected until their swords are needed, and then.
But why are they disrespected? You know,
Yeah,
Clarice,
well, they're bullies sometimes.
Clarice walks into this, right? And she's like, my cabin, our namesake, we're constantly disrespected until you need soldiers, and then you call us in, and like all of these things, right? But it's not as though every other day of the year they are treating the others well. You know, like she's complaining about being disrespected when literal day one of Percy being there, she tries to stick his head in a toilet.
Yeah, that's true.
Because at that point, he is unclaimed and just belongs in the Hermes cabin. You know, like, I understood her sentiments, but I could not blame the people for not wanting to give her what she wanted.
Right.
Because I was like, man, like, she really do just kind of, like, bully her way into situations.
Yeah.
And she does get a lot more tolerable in these later books because she deals with the labyrinth.
She does.
And
she grows up.
She grows up, but not enough for the crisis that they're dealing with.
Yeah. It was really hard from a parent's perspective.
To
read this book.
Love this book.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, this book I think is my favorite of the original series. Strictly because it reads the oldest, obviously, because it's, you know, they're older. And so while they still had moments of making kid decisions and stuff like that, they were old enough for me to be like, yeah, they're getting to the age where like my students are. So I can kind of understand.
Right.
Like my students would make the same decision in a lot of cases. So I got it. Whereas I haven't had to deal with like a 12-year-old in a while, you know, because even my 12-year-old doesn't act like a normal 12-year-old. So for it to be like these kind of things, the first book was like hard to get into. I really like books that do fighting scenes well. And so to really see Percy come into his element as a
He really
fighter.
becomes like a general for
Yeah,
the
like,
army. He is leading this army of demigods against Kronos and his army, and it is phenomenal to see the way that these kids just step up and are
yeah.
like, okay, we're gonna
And
protect our.
and a big part of it, because I've obviously have been in this fandom for
Mhm.
longer than my youngest sister has been alive, which is crazy to me. But to see, like, some people will argue, like, oh, Percy became that kind of fighter because he had the mark of Achilles and everything. And I'm like, no, 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 no,
No,
no, no, no, no, no, no.
he was like that
Percy
from book
was
one.
invulnerable because he had the mark of Achilles. I was like, but homie was almost best. Homie bested Luke book one.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people try to credit how well Percy manages to get out of fights because of this mark of Achilles, and I'm like, no, 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 no,
No.
no. It
No.
also, like, put some, like, respect on the fact that, like, getting that mark was not easy. Like, he had to create
Mm-hmm.
a mental boundary of, like, I'm not going to think of myself as a god.
Yeah.
Um, they could never make me dislike Percy,
No.
and
No.
I think, like, watching him grow up in this original series is really crazy. And also just, like, knowing what he gets put through
In the next
in the
series.
next
Yeah.
series, because,
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna spoil the next series for you lovely viewers or anything, but we get a character in the next series, right, that Rick really tries to make it to where you are, like, painting the two of them against each other
Yeah.
because of who they are. And, like, the fandom is still very much like this person versus Percy. And I'm like, man, listen, not just because I think that this other character is objectively very boringly written.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the time was not put into this character.
Mm-hmm.
He don't compare, and,
No.
like, I'll get into that more once we get introduced to him and we see, like, his interactions with Percy and stuff like that. But, like, Percy really is that guy at 16 years old. And I think that's so cool. I fangirl for Percy a lot of the time. But to see also how Annabeth, like, this goes back to the fact that they're, like, annoying kids, seeing the issues between Annabeth and Percy in this book were so annoying. Because I was like, man, like,
But it was typical
it was
teenager stuff.
typical teenager stuff. The only time I did not like Percy in this book was when he was hanging out with Rachel. Rachel kisses him, and then, like, a chapter later, or 2 chapters later, Percy's asking Annabeth if she was going to kiss him for good luck.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, like, you're making it hard to defend you right now as to why Annabeth is upset.
But, also typical teenager stuff.
Teenager stuff. But, like,
Does not make it okay.
yeah, but he makes
But
up
it
for it.
makes
He makes
sense.
up for it in the
He
second
does.
series,
Yes.
which we'll nod back to this later on. But he definitely makes up for it, I think, in the second series with that behavior. Luke is creepy. We're kind of jumping around, but Luke is creepy. The fact
Luke
that
is creepy. But once you get, like, his backstory, it makes a little bit of sense why he is the way that he is.
Yeah.
Like, his mom went certifiably insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's not me being ableist. She is literally
She's
lost her marbles.
Yeah, she's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
A little bit. Because she tried
Being
to
the Oracle,
become, yeah, the Apollo's Oracle, and that was not a thing that was meant to happen.
That was a terrible idea.
Shout out to Hades for cursing the Oracle in that capacity.
Yeah, that poor girl.
That poor girl. But, like, you see that Luke was essentially abandoned by his father.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his mother. Like, Lord only knows what he went through growing up in that house with her screaming and hollering and, the random
Bursts of,
episodes
yeah.
of prophecy that she would have to deal with. And then he finds,
a found family.
Yeah, a found family. And I know it's really creepy with Annabeth. And I've tried to rationalize it in my head a little bit. Like, why did Rick decide to make Luke seem so creepy towards Annabeth?
Yeah.
And I can't. I truly can't.
Here's my thing. I love me a good complicated villain.
Mm-hmm.
Love me a good complicated villain. It would have been so simple for Luke to have complicated love type feelings towards Talia, who had that same, if not more, connection with Luke because they were together longer. They were trying to survive together for longer time.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Annabeth comes in and both of them essentially parent her until they get to Camp Half-Blood, and then he makes a point of saying he says she's like a little sister to me or whatever in the first book, and Percy is like, oh, I wonder how she would feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to this book, and as he is dying, he takes his final moments to ask Annabeth whether she loved him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, bro,
but I think that's all he wanted. I think all he wanted was to be loved for who he was. And when you think about it, in some capacity, Annabeth did that.
Yeah,
but she was the only one who really stuck by him and believed in him.
But the thing was within the context of her response, right? Because she says at one point I thought I did, stuff like that. You can tell that the conversation was were you ever in love with me?
Yes.
And that's where he lost me. Cause I was like, man, if you were asking her, do you love me as a homie? Do you love me as family kind of thing? I'd be like, yeah, Annabeth, be honest with him. He needs that reconciliation. Yeah. But in those final moments of that,
it was a choice.
Yeah. And I was like, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's a lost little boy that thought everybody despised him and that he would have been better off with somebody who was openly at least evil instead of someone that was the two-faced that he believes the gods were and stuff.
I think it was more he truly did want to destroy Olympus and the gods because in his mind, his father Hermes abandoned him and then allowed his mother to make a really poor decision that cost him his mother, basically.
Yeah, I think, and I got it from his point of view, but I also I don't Hermes couldn't have known, Apollo might have known. And so that becomes the question of why would you allow it kind of thing. But also I think Luke not giving his mom the autonomy of she made that choice kind of thing, as bad as the choice was. I mean, it's a hard thing because the kid had to parent the parent. That's kind of been the theme.
Yeah.
For a bit. But yeah, I love me a complicated villain. And so I don't despise Luke. I just dislike some of the character choices that were made with Luke.
Yes. Speaking of complicated, are we talking about Selena?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready.
So I love Beckendorf, right? And I forget every single time
how
early it happens. Because I know that he dies, right? I know that he sacrifices himself. But it's literally third chapter, if that.
Oh, I think it's second chapter.
Yeah, it's really early in. And I think it's incredibly difficult to kind of stomach, And I like that Nico at least tells Percy like he does not blame you kind of thing. Like it's the closure
Yeah.
that a lot of people in life
Hmm.
want when it comes to their loved ones passing. And so I did like that Percy at least got it because then
Yeah.
he was able to walk into the war not
Without
carrying
that.
that with him, you know?
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
think if he was carrying that with him, it would have been really difficult for him to lead the rest of his,
Hmm.
demigod friends and stuff. She's Yeah, I mean, the best way to describe her is she really is like a complicated character.
Hmm.
The part that I've never understood, and maybe you can shine some light on it, is I don't know why she would act as a spy. Like I know that she says like, oh, it's because Luke was always nice to her and stuff.
Yeah.
But then
She
she
trusted him.
never stops. Like I guess for me, I'm like, man, the moment that I would have lost Beckendorf, I'm throwing that necklace into the lake. Like
And I think that could be explained by like grief makes you do really
yeah.
weird, messed up things. Like
Mhm.
in her brain, maybe she's like, well, did Charlie die for no reason? Like what was the reason? And I think a part of it was just she was trying to find some peace with Charlie's death, and she just kept going on autopilot
Mhm.
until she realized what her spying was doing and the devastation it was causing. And then, when the Draken came out and she was like, I'll go to camp. I'll get Clarice in the Ares cabin. Like, I'll go do it.
Yeah.
Because she was like, I so desperately need to fix this fuck up
Mhm.
that I made.
Yeah, I guess like I really felt for her. I really did. I It's hard for me to understand her choices even knowing grief just because
Mm-hmm.
of the like insurmountable amount of like loss they get because of her choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to like put two and two together. Um I also get like this book specifically is the reason I always get nervous now when like a new character gets like randomly mentioned, not like a new character, but like a character that's been there and then suddenly they have a name. Like we got
Ethan.
Ethan, we got like Lee Fletcher was one that
Yep.
hit me of like, oh, we've gotten his name mentioned a couple times in the last couple books, so he might not have been, you know, worthy of a full conversation or anything, but he's always been,
Mm-hmm.
head of the Apollo cabin, so he is in those meetings, he's in those conversations. And so for it to be like one sentence of like, oh, Lee Fletcher had an Apollo shroud on him. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, like I think Rick does really well at being like big character or small character, war is impacting them.
Yes.
Um, which I think is like really poignant. Um, I like that Percy didn't become a god, though I do like the fan fictions where he does because they're just so cool. Like I think fan fiction authors are super super talented and creative. Um and sometimes I wonder like if he would have just been a god, things would have been easier, you know?
You think so?
Yeah,
He's still a kid.
he's still a kid, but I think
He's still
like
gonna make stupid decisions
mhm, but I think the specific plot point that happens in the
with
next
the
series. Yeah.
and the yeah.
I think
Yeah, yeah.
for those who
For
can't
the
see,
can't see.
Kayla gave me hand signals and I understood.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think there's like certain things that happen to him. And also, wait, sorry.
Are we just gonna breeze past Hera?
That's what I was saying. I was like,
No, I know. I see where your brain's
I
going.
was like, wait, I've never noticed that Rick really lays a foundation.
Yes, he does.
And because I remember reading the second series, right?
Yep.
And being like,
why?
This comes out of left field.
Right.
But she really comes out of, I thought she really came out of left field for the second series. And now rereading it, I'm like, man, Rick really lays the foundation.
That was there.
Of her being a conniving little thing, making weird choices, or just like her already having beef with them.
Yes.
You know, because then I'm like, man, she really paints it later on of like, oh, I did this because I trusted that you guys would handle it or whatever. And I'm like, no, a lot of it was like, you already didn't like these characters.
It was vengeful. It was vengeful. Yeah.
And, Rick's brain. Crazy.
On point with almost everything.
I love when authors.
I love foreshadowing.
I really, that's why like in most of my like fantasy tabs or like even with Percy, like throughout all 5 books, I always had like a foreshadowing tab because obviously as a reread, I was like, man, like I'm noticing things that you're doing that get brought in later on, you know, throughout the series. It's like a reoccurring thing of at the beginning of Sea of Monsters, you get like the fleece gets mentioned and then that ends up being like what they need to find. And you have like little nods to what's going to happen in that series, but then you have like deep cuts to things that you'll see later, or like things are really unfolding in my brain. Chat things are crazy. Like Rick makes a point of us knowing like Talia's last name in this book.
Yeah, I clocked that.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening.
Tell us your thoughts on the Last Olympian, please.
Talk to us. Scream at us. Tell us if you're connecting dots, if you've read The Lost Hero, because the dots have been connected.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
Gonna go all Charlie Day.
Yeah, I'm super excited now to go through with tabs because I had never tabbed. Like with the rereading series, it's going to be interesting because now a lot of my older books are getting tabbed, and I just had an idea of another series I want us to read. Okay. Anyways, this has been another episode. There will be links, hopefully, in the bio that you can like stalk us at. For those who are not aware, we also stream.
Yes.
So find us, say hi to us. I'm waiting for the day that somebody comes to us from finding us from Margin Mavens.
That would be dope.
First viewer that does that, I will gift a sub.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I will gift a 3-month sub.
Yeah. I'll do it right then.
If you found us first through Margin Mavens and then find us on Twitch, let us know. I will gift you a 3-month sub.
But all right, the gauntlet's been thrown. See you in the next one.